What's up, guys? Brandon with Strict Vision Athletics here with Ted Bezemer. How you doing, man?
Doing great.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. It's definitely a. Did you mention have you done a podcast before?
I have actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, outstanding. So
Not one like this though.
Is
a little different.
That's what we do. I'd say different is
different.
probably a good adjective for a lot of what we do. Do you want to try some of this?
Not right now, actually.
Okay,
but I
Eli,
will
you want
later,
one?
probably.
Sure. There you go. I'm just gonna take one because I know they gave me two and it was crazy. Yeah, this stuff. To your earlier question, this Minefold, it's in the same family as coffee. It's kind of like tea. It's the same. Okay. It's a plant extract similar to tea, but it's just the pill form. So you only get the energy boost. You don't have any of the if you get calories or anything like that, sweet tea, that kind of stuff. Make sure your glass isn't leaking, by the way. I think I might have put mine on weird. All right. So, let's do this, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure and honor to have you here.
I appreciate it. Glad it worked out.
Yeah, me too. So, let's kind of start this off. I want to, first and foremost, I want to hear about your backstory. I want to hear how long you've been a coach, what you've been doing, what's most exciting to you.
Oh, wow. Well, as far as the AXIO stuff goes, that started about 3 years ago.
Okay.
But my background is in orthopedic and sports physical therapy, and also I've been a strength coach for a while. So 25 years in physical therapy and almost, probably hurts to say it, but almost 30 as a strength coach.
Okay.
AXIO is a product of basically me trying to solve a really bad shoulder injury. Did not want to have surgery and was looking for something that'd be a little bit more dynamic and progressive that would get me to avoid surgery, but not only that, but also progress with me as I became stronger and improve function and performance as well.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
And where did for those of you guys who don't know, I guess we haven't really even given it the introduction.
Yeah.
I first heard about Ted through the AXIO. So that's this little thing right here, which on first glance, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, by all means.
I can hold it. I'm saying I can hold it if you want.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. It's a very unique looking piece. It almost comes off like a chew toy. It's the very first thing I thought when I saw it, 'cause I got a dog. I'm like, I wonder what this does. Tell me about it. What is its origin? I know you're on now your second iteration of it. Is that what's coming out?
Oh, no. This has been going for a while now, so about 3 years, but this is the product now, but we are going to make a couple of tweaks moving forward, but there's currently 4 different models of different weights, different resistances. But yeah, you're right. It looks kind of harmless, looks a little innocuous, like it's not going to be as challenging and strenuous as it is.
Yeah.
Kind of playful. Which makes it kind of interesting when people pick it up and feel what it really does.
For me, what I have practically found for myself has been the benefits of doing it for a warm-up. Now, I understand it does a lot more than that.
Sure.
To describe to the people what it actually does, it's got 2 or even 3 steel balls along this rubber tubing that will move centripetal. Am I saying that right?
Rotationally, so centripetal force.
Centripetal force is what it plays off of, which I want to get into that. What is centripetal force?
Yeah.
It works in a very, very unique way to where even your range of motion does not need to be all that large. Yes. I noticed that very early on. I'm like, this is hitting my shoulder in a way that doesn't require me to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, you almost have to kind of drive it and kind of keep it on the road a little bit, right? So if you drive it really efficiently, then you're not going to see a lot of movement that occurs.
I love that analogy. Can you explain how because driving it is exactly the words you used when you said, okay, you've got 3 different, there are 3 different versions?
There are 4 different versions, anywhere
versions.
from 1 to 3 masses. So as you get into multiple masses, now you have an issue of controlling weights that each have its own force. And that makes it much more difficult to coordinate. And so strength alone isn't enough. It's heavier, but it takes control and
control it and make it happen. Yeah. So what would you say would be the difference for somebody who... Maybe for somebody who's working on recovering from an injury versus somebody who wants to do strength training, how would that translate to the 4 different sizes? Yeah. First of all, I mean, it spins around. It creates this centripetal force. Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah.
What does that do?
Yeah. So the word driving actually is something we kind of adopted not too long ago because people would often ask, does it go by itself? And you just hold on to it and it self-propels itself. But as you know, you actually have to drive it.
Yeah.
You have to generate the force. And so there's a resistance inside that chamber. That outer pliable shell deforms and actually decelerates the mass. So it creates a rotational resistance. So unlike free weights and bands that act in one plane of motion, which is fine. I'm a big fan of strength training. I do a lot of that stuff. This actually acts in a full 360 degrees of resistance, and it constantly changes, which is why two things. One, it's actually challenging to coordinate. Your nervous system has to really do a lot to keep it on the road. But also it fluctuates, so you're getting muscles to fire in different patterns. And as you mentioned, like for your rotator cuff, it's a no-brainer because, well, your shoulder is a super shallow joint. You need your rotator cuff to fire harmoniously to keep that ball centered in the joint. And so without a doubt, it's a no-brainer for overhead athletes and things like that.
It would find most of its practical application for shoulders. Am I right in that?
You're exactly right. In fact, that's why I made it. I had a pretty significant shoulder injury. I'm a hockey player. I dislocated my shoulder, tore my cuff and my labrum.
Sure.
And was in my center the next day. I fortunately got my shoulder back in pretty quickly. And so I was in there the next day trying to do some loading. I want to get it stronger and realize that we need more than just mechanical strength or mechanical stability for optimal joint function, with any joint for that matter, but especially to your point, the shoulder. And so I had a wand, like a body blade, something like that, that kind of works some dynamic stability. And the truth is that that's not that realistic to really how the shoulder needs to function. It's not that high level.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't want to make a rehab tool. I wanted to come back, with like most people who get hurt. We want to come back stronger than before. I want to be able to throw a football with my son, throw a baseball with my son. I want to play hockey again and not risk having another injury or needing surgery. So this was the result of that, and it solved my problem. I dodged a major surgery, and I've got multiple AC separations. I mean, wow. I got orthopedic friends who would love to do surgery on my shoulder.
I'm sure. Yeah. Oh man, that's a rough surgery.
Yeah, you don't want to go down that road. You can avoid it if you can. So.
Yeah. The only thing that I ever had, because I've had clients with shoulder issues before I found this. The only thing that I ever used, there was I'm sorry, I'm blanking on what the product's name was. It was essentially a jump rope handle with a small 6 to 8 inch wire. And on the end of that wire, there were little, almost stones, these little round spheres that weighed 1, 3, and 5 pounds that would go on the ends. And you would spin that wire. It's actually very similar to the same technology as
similar feel.
This goes more into, I feel like it continues PT a little bit further than that can, in that this can get heavier. This can actually, like you said, this can actually get to strength training. You can drive the heavier axios beyond just your, fresh off an injury, I need to do PT. You can keep going. You can push it a little further.
Yeah, I think, I've seen people take bands, for example, and put them around their wrist and swing a heavy super band around, And so the difference, though, is that you're not getting there's no resistance to that. That's just the mass trying to move your arm.
Sure.
So that actually would be very low level, in my opinion. It probably would be very well tolerated by people with injuries. I would say, if anything, AXIO, even though it makes a lot of sense to rehab professionals, because they're looking for things that are really good for proprioception and neuromuscular training, things that we lose when we're injured or fatigued.
Yeah.
The truth is, I didn't want to make a rehab tool. I wanted something that took a rehab concept that's focused on, but actually pour some gas on it and make it something that's for high-level performance.
Sure.
And the irony behind it is that I made it, though. I made it to solve my problem. I wasn't going to manufacture the product, but once I had people who were more fitness people who really were like, hey, this thing's fun. I like it. I feel this in my core. I'm getting my heart rate up. It all of a sudden took the form of more of an upper body ergometer and not just a shoulder training tool. And so to your point, there's a lot of ways that it can be used that I probably could do a better job showing people, because the variety, the ways you can use it's endless.
For stability training, a lot. What I've done with it, there's a product called the Strong Board. It's this, you've seen it?
Yeah.
You've seen that thing? Yep. So I'll take that. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a two-level platform with springs in the center, very strong springs that create a very unstable. It makes the Bosu ball feel like a solid wood plank. Like, it's very, very, very unstable.
Right.
And what I do is oftentimes I'll take that, I'll stand on it, and especially my clients that are dealing with a lot of balance and mobility issues, maybe they, can't really do the AXIO full speed, but they can certainly take it and they can turn it, they can drive it while on the Strong Board. So now you're getting a strength aspect with a balance aspect. Yeah. My point being, there are certainly things you can do with this that go beyond just rehabilitation for the shoulder.
Without doubt. I think what I've learned with it is that it's, another analogy I would use, it's kind of like learning to jump rope. And I think
that's a good one.
As a trainer, I personally have never really had to teach anyone how to jump rope. And if you think about it, I don't know what the instruction manual looks like with a jump rope, but it's, put rope behind, put a rope behind you, throw it in front of you and jump over it, and then repeat and trip over it and repeat. And so AXIO is kind of like that. You have to trip over it. You have to lose control of a little bit. That's error messages are good for the brain, and that's how we learn. And so once there's a leap that's made where someone actually becomes proficient enough to rotate it just in a standing position, then you can really go on that journey of bring it into anything, side planks and lunging and single leg work and unstable surfaces and stuff like that. And like I said, it's interesting to watch how it evolves as people get more proficient at it.
And I completely agree with that, because I'm not someone who I would not compare myself to Brandon when it comes to the financial level. But when I first did this, it took a lot. Like, it's just a different movement that I'm not used to. Yeah, there's a total technique.
Yeah,
huge learning curve.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, but I think it really does come down to, really, like I say, it's on me to actually help coaches be able to coach it more. From a therapy perspective, because physical therapists might have 4 or 5 patients at the same time.
Were you a physical therapist?
I am.
You are a physical therapist
who
didn't want to make a PT tool.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Exactly. No, because I think that as much as I think the nervous system really is the most important, tool in our toolbox, that we probably discount sometimes, I think that we sometimes sacrifice strength by focusing so much on the nervous system, or vice versa. And so I don't think it needs to be like one or the other. I think AXIO is really a combination of both, and you need both, and probably maybe a little more nervous system.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you've got to have balance, and so oftentimes that makes its way. That should always make its way into a proper periodized program. You need to have stuff like this, like the Blaze Pods, that kind of thing, where you can take something that works on the timing, works on the reaction, especially with athletes. With your general individual, of course, they need it, but with an athlete especially, that's something that has to make its way in.
I agree. I think with athletes, if you looked at the metric of strength between athletes, you're probably not going to see a lot of variance. But when it comes to how well their nervous system uses their strength, or how well they sense or anticipate force, that stuff is really what raises the level, and that's what makes someone a good athlete. It also probably is what decreases risk of injury for a lot of people too.
On that topic as well, this is an incredible tool for injury prevention, not just for PT, but for if you're somebody who's perfectly healthy with great shoulders, never had a problem, use this anyway. Take this on and throw this in, especially at the beginning of all the warm-ups. It's I haven't found anything that's better for, no matter what I'm doing. If it's somehow upper body related, I'm gonna hit this. It's not even that long, 30 seconds.
It doesn't take long.
It doesn't take long.
No, and we really kind of work on different parameters. I mean, with a lot of my clients, I might have them go 30 seconds between arms. I typically use as an interval trainer in that way. I might also combine, if I'm doing some type of a motion though, I might, rep it that way as well. So, and then basically you gamify it. Like, look, if you lose control, it's just like tripping over the rope when you're jumping rope. Just the clock's still going, or, get your reps in, finish your jumps. And what you'll notice is that the learning curve is not as steep as most people think. Once they start to get it, then next thing you know, they're like, wow, now I'm side planking with it. Now I'm lunging. Now I'm split squatting. Now I'm single leg. It's a pretty good curve once you get over that first leap. Yeah.
Speaking of the curve and the leap, you brought one. You brought the heavier model. Now this is the new model.
Well, this is the 3 mass. So this is our expert model. So this is, honestly, as far as the green one there that you showed earlier, that is the most versatile of all the AXIO trainers, because it's great for warm up, great for for actually in training, and also recovery. But you can implement that one because it's a little easier to handle. This has 3 masses, that has 1.
Right.
So even though this is only a pound heavier than that, it's going to punch more like about 15 pounds heavier when you break in all the way it works with the physics of centripetal force. So,
right.
So this is really difficult to use in more dynamic, unstable positions, and so by far the 360 is the most versatile. But depending also the orientation to gravity. So for example, if I'm holding it this way, I also have a gravitational force that's acting on it. I have clients who are in their 70s, 80s, who I'll take the heaviest expert level AXIO and I'll hold it in this orientation. And when I do that, now I take gravity away from the masses, and I might put them and have them walk while they're actually rotating this in a circular pattern. This is creating transverse plane resistance, which of course for trainers we want to work the transverse plane. And so it's a very minimally invasive way to actually train the core. I've had patients with multi-level fusions in their back, rheumatoid arthritis, like some pretty bad stuff.
Wow.
That they can handle this and it doesn't mess with them. And the same thing for shoulders. It's just like I said, the orientation to gravity, lever arms, things like that, body positions, all those are factors that can affect the resistance, the difficulty. We call it a blender position, just to kind of gamify it a little bit, you know?
See, I'm glad you're pointing this out to me. This is not something I did with this yet.
Right.
And
usually people don't put two hands out in the first place. They're always thinking one hand.
Always.
And then
that's
I'm like, have you not tried a two-handed torso turn and half kneeling? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, come here. You know, like it's it's like it's a game changer when you're thinking about core stuff. We'll go through some core stuff. It's crazy what this does to your core when you start to go into those half kneeling split squats. I mean, we've got professional sports teams, we've got hockey teams, NHL teams who are doing this in low split squats for 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So a split squat iso hold because they need to stay low for a long period of time, and then they're combining it with torso rotation, which is a great way to ingrain owning your mobility and your hip stability at the same time. It's sneaky good.
Yeah.
Sneaky good.
Yeah, sneaky good. You used an analogy, not today, but earlier when we spoke about how driving this and driving that are like driving two separate vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
What was that analogy?
Yeah, so, they like I get people say, well, which one's the best one for me? Intermediate, advanced, expert. And the truth is that really you should be able to handle them all. And the truth is also is that because they all drive differently.
Sure.
And the more robust your nervous system is, the more stable you are, the better you can handle different things, different loads, different forces. So one analogy that seems to work is the green single mass systems. You can drive those more like a sports car.
Which this is the lightest, just to reiterate that to everybody.
The green one is the lightest. That's the easiest one. There's an orange one, which is the 720, which is two masses. That's a little heavier, only a half pound, but it's going to punch a lot harder. And then this red one here is the 1080. This is the Widowmaker. This one's the one that will really kind of take you out of your shoes. Right. But if you try to drive this one like a sports car, this doesn't handle like a sports car. This drives more like a bus or a truck. You really have to drive it big. You can't go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds in this.
Which
you can
this
gradually,
is 0 to 60, right?
Yeah,
like when I'm doing warm-ups for my shoulder, if I'm doing forward and
Yeah.
backward, I'm doing this like a sports car.
You're exactly
So-
right. Yeah, and you won't see a lot of displacement of the AXIO when you're doing it like that. Like I've seen your video, it looks like it's pretty clean, and the ball's moving fast. But because for you to get the ball to move fast, the resistance, you need to be able to be stable proximally, and that's what's happening. And so you'll see, just like when someone's jumping rope and they're leaking energy, you'll see a lot of body parts moving. They have a little extra hop. They kind of everything's flying all over the place. But then when they start getting really efficient, you'll see there's very little leak of energy. And it's the same thing with an AXIO. It's just the challenge is that you can't just come out of the gate smoking with this thing. It takes a little while. You go big to small. That one you can probably go pretty quick right out of the gate. You know?
Right out of the gate.
And I actually do have a question, and this this is coming from someone that doesn't know a lot when it comes to these different things, but is there a reason why you did 3 masses instead of one mass that weighs more than that?
Yeah, well, because resistance is not the only factor that we're trying to improve on. As much as this is actually fairly strenuous, these can be really actually strenuous, more than people think.
This is strenuous.
Yeah, even that's 3 pounds, and that will noodle pro athletes' arms, like 6'5", 220 pitchers.
Oh yeah.
The additional mass is what really makes the nervous system have to work better, because now you have to coordinate. I got a guy who's a PhD, a shoulder elbow research specialist, who can probably describe this better than I can, but each mass has its own force vector, and so you need to coordinate them and have them move together in unison. If you
not easy.
If you just chuck force at something, which can work when you're trying to move a load, by the way, right? It can. In this case, your force vector and your control has to be very high level to be able to coordinate 3 separate masses. And so, down the road, we'll probably consider doing a single mass heavier unit. Just because it'll work. It'll work. And but I think the key was really to try to give people this, open up a whole other world with trying to create more of a neuromuscular component. And like I said, it's challenging. It's not something you just pick it up and own it. And the truth is, if it was something that was easy, why would we even bother? We're okay with what it takes to improve our metrics with strength, and realize that it might take 4 weeks or 6 weeks to be able to lift something that's heavier than what I can lift now. But yet we don't necessarily think our nervous system is the same way. You know, or maybe we discount the effect of the nervous system. I would hypothesize that when you improve your nervous system, you actually may see greater strength gains.
Oh, I would.
And we're using
totally
this
agree with
in like excitatory ways as well for lifters now who are doing like 10-second or 5-second explosive AXIO rotations and then getting onto the bar.
Well, if you want to take an active rest period, if you're doing upper body and you want to go active rest,
exactly what I do.
Grab a couple of these.
Without a
Grab
doubt.
the light ones, but hit those in between your sets.
Yeah.
And tell me you don't cut the time of your workout in half. I mean, it's yes, it's central, but it's so physically overbearing if you are doing this as a superset.
I agree. That's it's a great way to do it, by the way. Supersets are I do it with supersets, and then also like if I'm deadlifting, I'll drop into a side plank and I'll do arm bars, 30-second arm bar side planks.
Haven't done those yet. I've done them. My favorite combination with the two has been a overhead military press, very slow, very heavy. Then this, just like right after one another. This is a burnout too. I mean, if you just did it at the end, if you want to just
it rings it out. You're
finish it.
It's like micro, like and also the interesting thing is, remember, like if you. I was just talking to some guy about this when just earlier today we were talking about some basketball stuff. And back in the day, I used to play basketball, and I would go to the gym and hit my arms. And then if I went to the gym and started shooting free throws, I'm just throwing up air balls. I'm not anywhere near making a shot.
Yeah.
And so that's an example of what happens when we fatigue, though. So you pre-exhaust with the military press. This will be harder to drive because your nervous system fatigues as you fatigue, and that's really where we get injured. So it's a really actually great way to train something just like you described.
On the topic of basketball, and really just sports in general, I find this to be extremely convenient because of how portable it is.
Yeah.
Was that a thought in your creation as far as manufacturing was sports? No, not at all.
Not at all. Actually, it wasn't. Actually, I made it. Like I said, I made it to fix my own problem. I was just trying to not have
funny how that
surgery.
works, right?
That's all I cared about, and I wasn't even going to make it. To be honest, it never even occurred to me to make it. I just wanted a tool that I could use in my rehab and my training, and then I had just fitness enthusiasts, just general fitness people who were like, "Hey, can I use your thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead. It's over there," and they're like picking it up, they're spinning it, and they're like dropping it, like they're out of breath, and they're like, "Wow, like it's kind of fun," and that was really the motivation. So the portability of it is something that, to your point, appeals a lot to professional sports teams. So Major League Baseball, they travel with a lot of their gear, and that's actually what happened with this, where really we got picked up more in MLB was. The Phillies were the first team to get them, and then one of my friends, who's also a medical advisor for AXIO, Steve Thomas, he was at a game, at the Mets game, and he's a consultant for the Phillies, and he called me up. And he's like, "I was at the game last night, and they had the AXIOs with them on the field, and I was talking to Jake Arrieta, and he loves them, and that's really where it all started with MLB." And so right now we have nearly 3/4 of MLB teams, organizations that are using them. Tons of players, but probably one of the coolest things for me is when I hear like really what the athletes are saying is how much they love it and how much they feel it, and I'll get guys who pick it up, if I'm out somewhere and then like come back 20 minutes later going like, holy shit, I still feel that. Like I've never felt anything like that before. So it activates,
it's unique because your shoulder's a complex of muscles. It's not just one. It activates the full ball and socket. The whole thing is just activated.
Like an orchestra. Like everyone's playing.
Everyone's playing.
Everyone's playing.
And for something like a pitcher, or I'm still on basketball, any of those, if you want to get a non-invasive way to just, if you're on the court, if you're on the field and you've just got to go, you've got a game in 20 minutes, you're hitting a warm-up, it couldn't be any better. I can't think of something that really is better for that purpose. To warm up the rotator, to get the shoulders fire, and to not you're not going to fatigue them.
You're not going to overexhaust.
You're not going to overexhaust them, like you mentioned. If they did arms and then went and tried to, they're going to shoot air balls. This isn't that way. It really does serve a very specific but very, very well needed purpose.
Yeah, and I think and I think also when you talk about warm up, for example, it's the nervous system that really needs to warm up as well, right? So it's not just a tissue temperature thing. It's really, can you get the phone lines plugged in? Is everyone ready to roll? It definitely does.
You have to think about it to make that work, because the first time you'll pick this up, guys, you're probably going to be like,
at first you do.
What is this? Yeah. After a few reps, you'll get the idea of like, okay, I've got to kind of concentrate here. One point that I loved, because I love doing a lot of closing the eye training. I love that.
Yeah.
I love just getting the timing and reactionary element involved.
Smart.
Doing it with that, very helpful.
It actually makes it easier.
Yeah, it does.
Right, because your eyes can fool you.
it's very strange. It's almost because the thing is moving. In the case of, at least with the 360, it's moving so fast, and you're going to feel it when you move it, that if you're looking in the mirror, it's actually moving. There's a lag between when it moves, because it's moving so fast, and what you see, and then how you react. So if you close your eyes and you just concentrate on the feeling, like just Luke Skywalker your way through it, you'll be able to.
Exactly. No, and that's exactly what you want, because I think you hit it right in the head there, is that, the better someone's sensory motor control, the better your coordination is, the less you use your eyes, the more you feel. If someone says, our eyes are giving us information all the time, we want to use our eyes, don't get me wrong, it's important. But if we want to really enhance our proprioceptive system, to your point, close your eyes, take your eyes away. Don't even worry about a balance deck, just take your eyes out of it, because you put yourself on something unstable, and what do? We just focus on something now. So, and it does help, surprisingly, when you take your eyes away from it.
It's weird. It's a very strange thing. What I will use this thing. It's called a Minefold mask. Okay. It's traditionally done for meditation. It's the only one that I've ever found that it's a mask similar to like a sleep mask, but it will entirely block out all light. It's a little pricey, but it's designed for meditational work. Right. So if you want to sit there, because people don't realize actually closing your eyes requires effort to keep your eyes closed while you're awake and while you're thinking. Yeah. Well, that's times 100 if you're doing a squat or if you're doing this. Like, not only am I concentrating on my eyes closed, like I'm having to really, really focus to do that. Right. So if you wear the Minefold mask and you do this, now I can actually open my eyes, but inside it's still pitch black. It's as though my eyes were closed, but I can still relax my face, the muscles, and just get it all done. So that would be something I think you should.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've actually, with some people, I've actually told them, okay, close your eyes. You don't look at it, and an analogy that I've used when I've spoke on this at some conferences is that if you use the analogy of like a little kid who, for the first time, they're walking with the top off the sippy cup, and they're filled with water, and they're walking across the room, their brain is saying, hold the cup, right? Their brain says, hold the cup. But their brain also says, watch out for the dog over here. Watch out for the thing on the floor. Don't level it. Their brain is micro-controlling everything. So upper level management is driving everything. And that's what happens in early stages of learning. So just like an AXIO when you're first learning, you're going to focus on it, and you're going to think about it, and you're going to be staring at it. And you're going to be doing everything you can. Your brain is very active. But what happens is, as you improve your neuromuscular control, you actually peripheralize that. So the best athletes, for example, when they're running down the field and I'm going to make a move on you, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do. I sense where you are and I make my spin move, or I cut over. It's reactive, it's anticipatory. And so, I knock you, I bump into you at a party, and you holding your drink, your brain says hold the drink. But anything that happened for you to correct that happens peripherally. It never goes to the brain. If it goes to the brain, it's too slow. It won't happen in time.
It's too late. It's already happened.
So what you'll find with an AXIO is that it becomes more, it's in the background. You develop what's called automaticity, which is really kind of sneaky good for, of course, for athletes, but really even as we get older. I mean, we're using these in, with people with strokes and Parkinson's.
Fascinating.
And like
Parkinson's, does it have
interesting stuff?
Do you know if it has any memory care? I mean, does something like this help with that?
So I've used it. We use it, like I said, with brain injury. So I've had a skier, for example, in Park City. So a skier had a pretty bad head injury, and about 5-6 weeks out, we have her basically sitting down on an unstable surface. So that's going to increase some element, right? Yeah. She's holding it in that blender position, the single mass unit, and she is just moving it around the circle. Right? And while she's doing that, I'm asking her to count backwards, but from 71 by 3.
Oh,
so it's pretty fascinating, though, when you look at the plasticity of the brain, though. Like I said, I didn't make this to be a rehab tool, but it does work. And so within a couple of minutes, she'd either lose control or she'd mess up the numbers. But within a couple of minutes, she was dialing it in. She's like, 68, 65, really 62. We have that one probably on Instagram somewhere. But it's pretty neat just to watch how the nervous system learned pretty quickly.
It's like a muscle.
You've got to feed it sure.
You can grow it. It can atrophy and it can get injured just like a muscle.
For sure.
I love that. You've totally. Yeah.
It's a different animal than, we don't really deep dive that one too much with our content, but we are going to be coming out with post-concussion protocols using this and things like that just it's got a lot of different angles on ways it can help people.
Sure. Oh, I think cognitive dissonance and what this can do for that community, especially for senior citizens and concussion protocol. I mean, it's very interesting. That's something I didn't even, until this moment, I'd never even thought to incorporate with something like this.
Yeah, it's a little different. But I like the idea. Like what I really like it. I think it's a good training tool. And I think we're talking about improving someone's neuromuscular system with their strength. As great as it is as a warm up tool. Like I said, we got pitchers who use it before they throw, before they compete. If you really want to improve your neuromuscular system, you're probably better off doing it 5 weeks before you perform versus 5 minutes before you perform.
Sure.
And develop that system that way. And like I said, it gets easier with a little bit of practice for sure.
Yeah, it's why making it a routine and part of your program, as I mentioned before, pre-injury or pre-warm-up, making this a regular training tool. It's got a lot of application.
Definitely.
It's
in the right hands. Like I said, it comes down to the coaches. The coaches, the coaches who basically see the value in it are the ones who are going to basically bust it out and mess with it. And of course, it's still a 3-pound weight. So at the very least, uses the weight, right?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the proprioceptive response and that sort of thing, which is it's been a lot of the focus of my study recently. I've been diving really into that, and that's where you actually mentioned the toe shoes. It's the same principle.
Concept, yeah.
It's got a strong neural drive benefit to wearing these, and it's the same thing with this, using your hands and just controlling that, with your CNS and just improving from that side. Yeah, your feet and your hands. That's where the proprioceptor neural response comes from.
Right. You got a lot of phone lines there. You want to use them. Especially, the feet. I'm a huge fan of barefoot. I think if I'm with an athlete and I can, their metrics for strength are really high, you could argue, well, that bucket's pretty filled, so maybe we need to look at a different bucket. And if they're kicking around an AXIO, then, and you guys have pets?
Funny, we have
that is a big moth.
That is a big moth. How'd that get in here? That's so weird.
I thought it was an owl.
That's so weird. I'm like, it's the middle of the day.
It's the lights.
It's the lights. It's gotta be. Oh man. Well, yeah. Again, I like it. I think it's got some very cool application.
I'm glad you dig it.
And I'm glad you came in because you've totally shown 2 or 3 different things, the 2 or 3 applications that I didn't even think about, specifically the memory care. That's big time.
Yeah. I would say moving forward, I think one of the things that, like I said, most people are using it with single-handed stuff, and I think that's great. And like I said, there's lots of applications there, but I think two-handed stuff, V-seat positions and in different body positions is split squats, half kneeling, things like that, long sitting. Pretty interesting training response, and almost like kind of interval training your core. It would be kind of a good way to describe it. So you're getting a conditioning benefit. You're getting your shoulder, arm care, dynamic stabilizers, rotator cuff while you're training your core. I think the more things we can kind of try to hit at the same time, probably the more rich it is from a training standpoint.
Absolutely. What do you see the future for it in? I mean, what's the big picture goal for this?
Well, like I said, so for overhead athletes, it's a no-brainer. So it's really it's going to keep spreading through baseball. Obviously, that's probably one of the first sports because they're very focused on arm care, have a high level of elbow, shoulder injuries, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it makes a lot of sense to them. And then, of course, to your point, it's portable. So, but really anybody, I mean, we have NFL quarterbacks who use it. We have, volleyball, tennis. We even have a cycling curriculum because it's a sneaky way to train your core that can help carry over to being on a bike. Archery. I was just up at an archery competition.
Yeah,
tactical,
you mentioned that.
Shooting. So there's really so many, and then of course just general fitness applications as an interval trainer and balance. And I mean, there's really a lot of different applications for it. In fact, it's actually been really difficult for me to narrow. Because it kind of means something to different people, you know, but
in different ways.
Yeah, but I like the idea of getting in thoughtful strength coaches like yourself and watching people kind of create curriculum around it. And so I'm always welcoming people to share their ideas and how they like using it and stuff like that, because that's how it has grown to what it is now. And it's like I said, it's good to have a lot of minds behind it.
Yeah, I'm gonna implement the. I'm going to definitely implement. Remind me, was that called tabletop position?
Like a blender?
Blender.
Yeah.
I'm going to implement blender position a lot more, and I'm going to do that with especially clients that I think have balance and mobility issues. I'm going to do that with an unstable surface and use that for that movement pattern.
Yeah, narrowing a base of support, things like that. Really, I find that some people will be really good in a standing position. They'll be pretty good at controlling it, and then all of a sudden you narrow their base and they can't move it at all. It just something that
touch your feet
affects their
together.
stability.
Now do it.
It's somewhat diagnostic. You'll see left and right leg, and I had I wish I would have gotten this on video. I was talking at a NASM conference, actually down here, in like
I'm taking that right now.
McDowell Ranch or something like that. It was a NASM Optimal conference before COVID, and so I did a talk there for like continuing education for personal trainers, and what I talked about was sensory motor control. And so I had this. I wish I would have gotten this on video because I probably had to pay the guy to actually be able to show people it. But long story short, I get this ripped guy. He's totally fit. He is like tank topped and just cut and polished, and he's ripping the AXIO in a driver position with both hands in front. And he's like, look, he's really good. Clearly he's handling it. So I said, hey, how about we change your stance? Let's go to a split squat. So he starts to go to a split squat. He's still doing it. And of course he's feeling really good about himself because he's just, he's owning it.
Sure.
So I said, okay, well, how about a lunge? Let's just do a forward lunge, drop down, plant your foot in a lunge and come back out of it, right? While you spin the AXIO. So you think, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's just going to lose control of the AXIO.
Yeah.
No. He actually went to come out of the lunge and he completely collapsed. His leg dropped into valgus, which thank God he didn't tear his ACL. Otherwise, that would have been the end of AXIO.
That'd be the weakest way to tear your ACIO possible. Imagine that. He's trying to explain that. What happened? Oh, I was spinning the AXIO and I tore my ACIO.
In a hotel boardroom, And so he literally buckled, dropped to the floor, clunks the AXIO, and then gets up really quick and he's looking around. And by that time, I'm pointing at him like, holy shit, I can't believe I just saw that. He just Control-Alt-Deleted on the floor there, and then he gets up and he's rubbing his foot on the floor, looking to see if there's is there like an outlet or something I stepped on?
Slipped on? Did I know?
What was that? I don't know. What was it, And no, so something neurologically happened there where here's a guy who would test very strong in any metric you looked at, but yet his nervous system just said, bloop, and he dropped. So plyometric lunges, things like that with motor control. It doesn't need to be a huge load to develop this system. And that's why you might see guys like, Odell Beckham tearing an ACL with non-contact. Here's a fit athlete. I mean, it happens all the time. These are no contact ACLs. Why does that happen?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I wish I had gotten that one on video. That's
that's rough.
He had the right look too. It was perfect.
That'd be it'd be the perfect marketing strategy.
If he's listening to this, I hope he doesn't know I'm talking about.
This is what can happen if you just let your CNS atrophy. It's like anything else. You could be the biggest dude in the world, and I mean, oh my goodness, if you look at fitness today, especially, I'm sort of picking on the bodybuilding community, I guess, but I mean, how many of those guys are going to just be whack on something like this? It's terrible.
It's strength. I've got some really big, strong people who come up and just shake it, and chuck it around, making a lot of noise and think they're doing it, and then you get like a tiny little, 5'2" girl come up, she picks up and she's spinning it like a buzzsaw in front of them. It's actually kind of, I like that. That's good because there's a process to it.
Yeah, I gave it to I had 2 girls try it, and both of them, they just did great with it. Better than I did when I first tried it. And I was like, man, this is...
Yeah, women are more process driven. I think they tend to try to figure out, how do I do this? Where guys just want to kind of maybe muscle it and then hope they stumble onto it.
Yeah. If it doesn't happen, I give up.
Yeah.
But
it's a psychology test for sure.
It's it can be. It should come with a disclaimer like, look, don't quit after your first couple times, because it's tough. It takes a little bit of...
Not as easy as it looks.
No, you pull it out of the box and you just give it it definitely takes a little bit of learning.
But once you get it though, it
becomes
satisfying.
It is satisfying. Once it actually spins around on timing and you're doing it, you're like,
it's satisfying. You're in the sweet spot.
Do you have a preference on spinning it forward or spinning it backward?
I think you should do both. So that's a great question, actually. Remember, we're trying to train the nervous system. We're trying to train muscle firing patterns.
Because it's different.
For different people too.
Interesting.
And so
I've noticed a left and right discrepancy too.
Oh, without a doubt.
Big time.
Without a doubt. Because your dominant side has better wiring. There's probably not a huge strength difference between your dominant and non-dominant side. It's probably marginal. But your motor control difference is going to be vast.
Oh yeah.
So I was at a climbing event with this one year, and had this guy walk up and pick it up with his right hand. He's just ripping it. I'm like, oh, nice, man, way to go! Didn't coach him at all. I'm like, how about the left hand? He puts in the left hand, does the same thing, and I'm like, holy shit! Who are you, man? And I'm like, what do you do? What's your background? He's like, oh, well, I fly a helicopter. And I'm like, oh, so left
sense.
And right. So it's probably pretty good with drummers and
anybody who's using the coordination factor quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's definitely, like I said, you'll see who's got a good nervous system. And remember, if you have a high strength metric, adding your nervous system to your strength is what allows you to tap into your strength better. So it's
This
wiring.
and the company called the Blaze Pods are probably the two best tools I have found for that. I love the Blaze Pods.
Yeah.
They're outstanding for that. So same thing. Say if I get an athlete down into a squat and he can do that great, and I say, okay, now spin the 360. Well, all of a sudden now that's a problem. It's the same thing with the Blaze Pods. If I stick them to the mirror, I'm like, okay, now hit these as many times as you possibly can and stay down in that squat. Well, all of a sudden his elevation starts to change. He comes back up.
Yeah.
It's it's undertrained. The CNS is undertrained, and it oftentimes in the most strong athletes.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's something that just needs to be fed more and worked in, and I think the in the training world, I think the water level is rising to that. With more dynamic stuff. I'm not a huge fan of getting super unstable with strength stuff, to be honest with you, because I think you're not gonna get stronger unless you're actually lifting off of something that's pretty stable, But
if you want to get better at bench, you should probably bench.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like I wouldn't be naive to say that, but the idea of mixing things like this into your training though can actually probably give you greater results in the long run.
Absolutely.
And also prevent injury, of course.
For the strength coaches out there, this would be a really good way if you're somebody who follows Conjugate. If you wanted to do this on kind of a dynamic day, this would be a really, really good way to throw that in there. See, if you want to do this, of course, if you want to do this as your warm-up for any day out there, you really could just do it every single day. But if you want to do it for a strength-based thing, or if you want to hit the big one and you want to do this in a superset fashion, throw this in on dynamic day.
Good application, yeah. We did. I presented at NSCA Coaches Conference in San Antonio back in January, and it was actually really fun because, like, what I liked about it is strength coaches, they like the challenge of it. If anything, PTs, I think physical therapists kind of generally don't want something that's challenging. They want it to be kind of just mindless and let someone go do it. But strength coaches actually want to coach, which is great, and because this is a tool that really lends itself to being coached in the early stages, and they like the challenge of it. So, I think there's a lot of good applications for that.
I do too.
Yeah.
I love it. So, Eli, you want to take us out of here?
Yeah. If you guys are watching on YouTube, our YouTube and TikTok is the same account. It is Strict Vision Athletics. And then if you want to check us out on Instagram, it is Strict Vision Athletics, except there's an underscore between every word. Ted, where can they find you? AXIOtraining.com and also on Instagram, Facebook at AXIO Training. No TikTok yet. Gotta probably do that, huh? Oh, you got to get on that.
Yeah, I'll talk to you guys about that. You can
I was going to say, we could talk about that for a whole
other
other podcast.
We'll do that one next time at AXIO Training.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. If you guys like our content and you want to see more of it, click the subscribe button down below, or as always, you can follow us on any of our other social media platforms. Stay fit, you guys, stay healthy, and become the 1%.